My name is Scott Rosen, and I am one of the partners of the Human Resource Executive Alliance. And we're thrilled today to have a fireside chat with Virtua Health, how HR drives overall success, with Dennis Pullin, President and CEO of Virtua Health, and Rhonda Jordan, EVP and CHRO of Virtua Health. Okay, so the HR Executive Alliance is sponsored by a group of companies who will hopefully be represented here today. I am one of the sponsors, the Rosen Group. We also have Marsh and McLennan Agency, represented by John Ford, Salveson Stetson Group, represented by John Toohey, Challenger Gray and Christmas, represented by David Panett, and Greenberg Traurig, represented by Malcolm Ingram. So thank you to all of our sponsors. So we are an invitation-only community of HR leaders. All of our members have access to networking, informative events. We have no vendors, and there's really no pressure for people who attend our meetings. Our next meeting, for example, is about generative AI, and that will be led by Susan Gunn. And we're looking forward to that session. You can always go to our website, which is hrexecutivealliance.com. We are also partnering with the HR department of the Year Awards. Many of you are familiar with this awards program. Virtua has been a winner and has won Excellence Awards and HR Department of the Year Awards, and has been featured for a Lifetime Achievement Award for Rhonda. And we are thrilled to also be a partner in this event today. And if you're interested, it's hrawards.org. And it's not too late to register for the event, which will be, I believe, on November 16th, Thursday night at the Crystal Tea Room. So now we're going to start our program. And I'm thrilled to introduce briefly Dennis and Rhonda. And then we'll start with the presentation. You are more than welcome to ask questions. You can raise your hand. You can put the question in the chat room, and that would be a great thing to do if you have any questions. And I'll pose them to Dennis and Rhonda, and I will also probably be asking a few questions as well. So we'll start with Dennis. Dennis is the president and CEO of Virtua Health, which is an academic health system in New Jersey. Dennis is a recognized thought leader and advocate for health equity. Mr. Pullin has led significant transformation of a 142-year-old not-for-profit organization, notably through the acquisition of Lourdes Health System in 2019, and the forging of an academic affiliation with Rowan University in 2021, resulting in the Virtua Health College of Medicine and Life Sciences. Welcome, Dennis. Thank you. Also going to introduce Rhonda. Rhonda Jordan is an executive vice president and chief human resource officer for Virtua Health, a $2 billion New Jersey health system with 14,000 employees. Rhonda has 30 years of experience and has played an essential role in business growth by leveraging HR acumen, humanizing the colleague experience, and ensuring that the right people are in the right roles. So with that, I am going to start off by posing a question to Dennis. And the question is, can you please just tell us, Dennis, a little bit more about Virtua Health. Say anything you want, but maybe just to educate some people who are not familiar with your organization. I'm sure many are, but it would just be helpful, your location, your size, kind of services you offer employees, and we'll start there.
Thanks, Scott. And first and foremost, thanks for having us on. It's always a pleasure to be able to highlight some of the great work that Rhonda and her team are doing throughout our state. As you mentioned, and also your introduction made me sound a whole lot more impressive than what I really am. But as a health system, we are South Jersey's largest fully integrated health system, and really committed, to live up to our brand promise, which is to be here for good. We do that with the support of over 14,000 colleagues, colleagues that are dispersed throughout the region in over 300 locations, including our hospitals, our specialty clinics, medical clinics, rehab centers, just a multitude of types of facilities, as well as being able to take care of people in their homes. So it presents us with a unique challenge in terms of making sure that we have the right type of people with the right commitment, the right skill set to provide the care to the community. And that's really where it all sort of rests, is how do we attract, hire, and retain the best people? And obviously that's where Rhonda's work and her team really come in handy to help us create what I like to think is one of the best health systems in the country.
Great. Thank you. And then Rhonda, I'm going to turn the next question over to you. And maybe you could just tell us a little bit about HR, how it's structured, how, it may be different than other HR organizations, just some of the brief background about the HR function itself.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Scott. And thank you again, as Dennis said, it's such an honor and a pleasure to be able to share with this group the great work that the human resources team does here at Virtua. And we can only do that great work by having the support of a CEO like Dennis. And it truly is a partnership. He truly lives and breathes the culture of this organization, and he walks the talk. So I'm happy to share from a human resources standpoint. We have about 90 colleagues in human resources. We are organized around a talent management function. First, I have a leader for talent management who's responsible for culture, experience, learning and development, our talent acquisition around attracting recognition. And then I have a leader who's responsible for our HR operations and has all of our total rewards, compensation, benefits, technology, and analytics, our employee health and safety. And then another key component is around employee and labor relations. We at Virtua do have 2 bargaining units. We have a leader that focuses around retaining, when you talk about employee and labor relations, addressing those types of issues. We have a business partner model. The business partners are aligned within the client groups and support the clients. And they are really front and center with each of our functions. And then lastly, I wouldn't say that it's anything that's unique, but I think that our structure has evolved. I think about when I first started in human resources and what was traditional, and now going into the expansion of a business partner model. And I also think what is also unique is all 3 of those particular functions work together in a collaborative way.
Okay, so Dennis, I'm going to start with you, and then I'll have Rhonda answer the same question. So the question is, kind of how did you get where you are? Like, did you start out as a CEO right out of college, or what was your career path, and yeah, just a little bit about your journey to your current role.
Did I start out as a CEO right out of college? I don't think so. I think at one point in
Yeah.
my life, maybe in high school, I thought I wanted to be a physician, and I went to college and realized I wasn't that smart, and really was drawn to science and business. So I've always worked in healthcare, always on the business side, which I truly enjoy. I'm pretty blessed in that I get to come to work every day and take part in making a difference in the lives of others. The work that we do is truly a calling. So I don't see it as a job. I've been very fortunate to have leadership roles in the state of Texas, where I'm from, Washington, D.C., Maryland, and now here at Virtua, which I have been for a little over 6 years. And really, I see the responsibility that myself and others in roles like the one I have, we have a responsibility to create what I like to call communities of wellness. And it's more than just the absence of illness. It's how do we be the best economic engine in the communities in which we serve? Because most often than not, Scott, the communities that we're in, where we have hospitals and so forth, are typically the largest employers. Looking at meds and eds or education, we typically are the driving economic engine in many of the communities in which we reside. And so that's a responsibility that I take pretty seriously in the role that a CEO in healthcare plays to ensure that we create these communities of wellness. So really enjoy the work I do. And as I mentioned, just having a career that's allowed me to work in every facet of healthcare, be it not-for-profit, for-profit, academic medicine, physician practice management, acquisitions and development, has really been a joy and something that I truly, truly look forward to doing each day.
Thank you. And Rhonda, I'll pose the same question to you. Tell us a little bit about your path to your current position, and a little bit of background on how you got there.
Thank you, Scott. And I, unlike Dennis, had a non-traditional path to where I am today. I am from Texas as well, started in retail. My degree is in marketing, had a path within that space, relocated to New Jersey. And then I said, I don't think I want to do retail anymore, and actually started recruiting for a firm for a couple of years, and then landed a recruiter position at Children's Hospital. And I think, Scott, that's where we first met many, many years ago. A year later, became the director of the recruiting function and stayed at CHOP for about 9 years. And then was fortunate to transition to, at the time, West Jersey Hospital, now Virtua Health. And I have been blessed to be here for 26 years and started as a director, and who in their wildest dreams would ever thought that I would be the executive VP and CHRO. And Virtua has provided me the opportunity to advance in multiple ways, from being that director to being a part of the performance management team, part of the talent management team, and now leading the HR function.
Awesome. Dennis, why don't you tell me a little bit about the working relationship between you and Rhonda, and what are some of the kinds of issues that you might talk about either on a day-to-day basis or, at whatever intervals that you guys get together and talk about things?
That's a mouthful. My working relationship with Rhonda, or my boss, that I typically refer to her as. Some days, Scott, is collaborative. Some days she provides counsel. Some days is therapist. But more often than not, it's a partnership. Understanding the task at hand and what we partner to try and accomplish. And I think the unique thing about Rhonda, I never worry about what she's thinking because I know how she thinks. And that's what's really important to me. And so I can always count on the end game with her to be in sync with what I'm looking for, because she's a critical thinker, which I truly rely on, someone that may not always have the answers, but can think critically about the task at hand. She understands, helps me to also communicate a lot about our mission and our vision, because everything we do is sort of based on that, and creating a workforce that embraces that and allows people to connect the dots. And so to me, one of her key roles in supporting me is how do we make sure everybody that works for us can connect the dots between what they do and our purpose for being here. And so our relationship, it has truly evolved over the last 6 years. I was really excited, and I have mentioned this in the past. One of the greatest days of my career was when I had an opportunity to promote Rhonda to Executive Vice President and our Chief Human Resource Officer. We have an organization that have in our most senior leadership, over 50% are women. And a lot of that has been driven by the work that Rhonda and some of her other colleagues have done. And I've just been along for the ride and watching the growth of this organization and watching these professionals really blossom. And I have benefited more than anybody. So when you talk about our relationship, it is truly, truly a partnership for me, and a partnership that have allowed us to accomplish some pretty phenomenal things.
That's great. Just a follow-up question on that. Some CEOs I've talked to have been HR believers from the beginning. Some have sort of evolved into, wow, I didn't realize how much HR can do for an organization, and sort of had to be a little bit convinced that HR was such an important component. Like, where are you on that kind of timeline? Were you an HR believer as soon as you became part of management, or was it something that you had to develop?
Absolutely, I've always been, simply because we're not in the business of making widgets, or we are people taking care of people, and so our greatest asset are our colleagues. And so knowing that our focus has to be about getting the right people in the right places at the right time, doing the right work. That is not something that I can own, and so embracing the roles of our HR professionals, it's critical. And it's critical because I think the best thing that we can do for our colleagues is to show them that they matter. And so having an HR lead, an HR professional, a group of HR professionals that really focus on that, is what makes us unique. It's what makes us stand out and not stick out. And so I have always been an absolute believer, supporter, and embracer of HR professionals.
That's awesome. Thank you. Just one more follow-up question. And also, I just want to remind our participants that we'd love you to please ask questions. You can, I believe, put them in Q&A, chat, or you can raise your hand, I think are the three options. So please, please, please. My follow-up question, Dennis, is there's this like cliche in HR about quote unquote having a seat at the table. And what my understanding about a seat at the table is that, HR is valued, equally with other functions in the organization. So, you might say, well, operations patient care is our number one priority, or finance, or IT, or do you know what I mean? Like those are all, how did that work? Was when you came into the organization, did you automatically say, "Hey, Rhonda, you're equal to everybody else at the table"? Did Rhonda have to earn that right? How is that seen at the sort of top of the organization? And does everybody else value? Also, I know you value HR, but how do the rest of your executive team look at HR?
Yeah, that was a loaded question, Scott. So I'm gonna try and unpack it here real quickly. Um,
All right.
yes, Rhonda has a seat at the table, but what's really important is not so much just having a seat at the table, is having a voice in that seat. Many of us oftentimes may get invited into the room and have a seat, but it's another thing when you have a voice in that seat and that voice is recognized as one that has something to say. And that is an earned position. I think what makes our relationship and Rhonda's voice so uniquely different, and this is something that I would absolutely encourage all of the HR professionals to have and to do, is understand the business. And so, as opposed to just understanding and being a content expert about your portfolio and what you do as an HR professional, the more you can understand about the business at hand. And so when I tap into Rhonda, I'm not tapping into just her HR expertise. I value her critical thinking about our entire business portfolio. And so being involved in strategic discussions about our business, being involved about some of the challenges, not just the people part, but the business part as well. And so that's what has elevated her role in the organization. That's what has elevated her seat at the table, is that she thoroughly understands the business of healthcare. And then she provides the content expertise around the people part. And so to me, that's where the real value is.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, Rhonda, sorry to keep you waiting here, but had to speak to Dennis on a few different issues. So yeah, I mean, you and I have known each other for a long time, and I've seen you, kind of move through your HR career, and just total respect, and so does the rest of the HR community. So I just, it's always a delight to have you here. So same question to start with. What was what would you say your working relationship is like with Dennis? What kinds of issues do you find yourself? Has there been any, I'll say, bumps in the road where you guys may not have been on the same page? And how do you resolve those kinds of questions?
So one of the things that I admire most about Dennis and the working relationship is that he truly is an inclusive leader. So when you started off, when you introduced him about health equity, it goes deeper than just the health equity. And he makes it easy for us as a team, not only me as an individual, but us as a team, because he values and wants feedback from us. So he asks for feedback. He wants to know the good, bad, and the ugly. And when you think about it, in the HR role, the CEO to me is the loneliest seat at the table, because most people will tell him what he wants to hear. And I will try to tell him what he needs to hear. And I have to do it in the Rhonda way, as he says, of being able to tell him that. But he's open to whatever that is. So we really have a good relationship. I remember there are some days I sit in his office and I said, I don't need you as my boss today. I need you as this. And then we'll have that conversation. And he also, when I think about the conversations that we have, it's about the culture. It's about people. He wants to make sure that we are fair and that we are doing the right thing. And that's how he leads. So it makes it easy for him. And when he answered the question about a voice at the table, he ensures that we have a voice because he's going to ask us our opinion no matter what the subject is. At the end of the day, he makes the decision, but he seeks it out from each of the teams. So I have to have that voice, and I'm not afraid to speak up when I need to speak up.
Awesome. Thank you. So we do have a couple questions from our audience. One is from Malcolm Ingram. Thank you, Malcolm. And it's a simple question like, what keeps you up at night? What are the things? And Dennis, I'll pitch to you.
Yeah, Scott, as I mentioned, we are truly a people business. And so making sure that we focus on the well-being of our colleagues. I saw in your chat somebody asked the impact, or what has the impact of COVID had on us. In healthcare, we are experiencing a tremendous amount of burnout. So people are actually leaving the industry as a result of being burnt out and the toll that COVID took on them. We're seeing a first-year turnover rate roughly at about 46%, across the healthcare industry in the first year. So you can imagine the churn. So for me, the thing that keeps me up is ensuring that we have an engaged workforce, a healthy workforce, addressing the burnout, the violence against healthcare workers, the turnover. That is our number one issue, is labor and the cost, not just the cost of it, but the availability. We mentioned at the onset, we have about 14,000 or so employees. I don't know the exact number, and Rhonda could verify this when she gets back on, but we probably have around 1,200 openings, and so that's a lot for an organization of this size that relies so heavily on its human capital.
Is this typical, Dennis, of most healthcare organizations? Do you think that that's their number one issue as well?
Without question. I talk to my colleagues around the country all the time. I sit on the board of the American Hospital Association. Our primary focus is on labor cost, labor availability. One of the reasons we forged a relationship with Rowan University and we created the Virtua Health College of Medicine and Life Sciences is such that we could take an active role in preparing the next generation of clinicians. And so creating our own pipeline, training and teaching and doing research in an effort to address the workforce shortage.
Yeah, I was thinking like you said before, you guys are such a people organization, both patient and your physicians, your nurses, and I wonder if you guys ever sit around the table, meeting your fellow CEOs, and think about, wow, this is a huge issue for us. Is there another way? And maybe there isn't. The words that come to my mind, or is there some way that AI, not to replace obviously your staff, but that would be one thing that would come to mind. Like, have you guys talked about it, or ladies, wow, we could use AI to help us with some of these issues, or maybe there's some other disruptive or transformational concept that could help with this issue?
Yeah, I mean, all of those things, you're spot on. So AI, not as a replacement, but to augment what we do. Absolutely, AI. And quite frankly, as someone who works in healthcare, there are certain aspects where I would almost prefer to have AI than a human in just certain very technical things, But what we're also looking at is, how do we leverage virtual technology, hospital at home, where we're actually sending employees or clinicians to the homes of our patients and providing care there, having virtual care, being able to to meet and talk with your physician or nurse practitioner online through this very platform that we're using. All of these things are gaining a tremendous amount of popularity and utility as a means of addressing some of the shortfalls that we have with human capital. So we've only barely scratched the surface of AI in healthcare. It is not coming, it is here, and it will start to expand on a very, very rapid pace. And not all of it is bad. Some of it is really good.
So we do have another question from the audience from Francesca Molinari. Hi, Francesca. It's been a while. Thank you for your question. So her question is, thank you both for being here and sharing your thoughts. The strength of your partnership is evident and admirable. My question is, it is a tight labor market, and I would imagine that there are many options for talented employees in your space. What do you focus on at Virtua or do differently than others to distinguish your organization to candidates? So how do you separate yourself from the pack? What is it that would make someone come to Virtua versus another healthcare organization?
And I'll let Rhonda address some of the details aspects of that. But first and foremost, it's try and create a culture that people would be excited to be a part of, a culture where the colleagues matter, a culture where people have a voice, and they can have a voice through some of our infinity groups. We call them our colleague communities. A culture in which we are committed to mission and where the vision is clearly articulated, that we are a strategically driven organization, and we're one that lives up to our brand promise. And our brand promise is to be here for good. And that has many definitions, but then we have the various programs that I'll let Rhonda maybe speak to that supports all of these things. And it starts at the very top of this organization and cascades throughout. And I think it's something that people can truly embrace and see. There is a reason why, Scott, you mentioned in our introduction, the recognition that we have received as an organization and as a human resource group. There is a reason for that. It is very intentional and very purposeful. We don't just accomplish these things by chance. We're very focused, and I would like to see very purposeful as an organization with the things that we do. Ms. Jordan?
A year ago, we conducted listening sessions with our colleagues. And we listened to many different job categories, from nurses to technologists across the organization. And we learned from them what motivates them, what are their pains and gains. And then we developed a strategy. We launched a media campaign that's focused on the employer value proposition. And we are trying to attract individuals that are not actively looking for a position, but those individuals who want to come here because of the culture we've created. And we have campaigns utilizing our own colleague voices about career growth, why they stay at Virtua, how we have created an inclusive environment. And I think that's what's beginning to separate us from the pack.
Awesome. That sounds great. So I'm going to put you both on the spot a little bit. And, I know Rhonda as a very level-headed senior HR leader, someone, I don't think I've ever seen Rhonda upset or, she's, I don't know, always seems to be. And Dennis, I don't know you that well, but you seem the same. I'm sure you guys aren't sitting in your offices singing Kumbaya to each other all the time, even though, you present. What's an example or two of, I would say like a challenge that you guys have faced and may not be on the same page on an issue and how you kind of work through it. Dennis, I'll start with you.
So, Scott, I've been here, as I mentioned, for over 6 years, and I can count on one hand, minus two fingers, the number of times that I have been on the opposing end of a decision with my senior most executive team. I have two groups that I routinely engage with. One is called my CET, which is our corporate executive team. That is all of my direct reports. And then I have what is called an SAT group, which is my strategic advisory team. That is made up of 5 individuals, my executive vice presidents. So my chief financial officer, chief operating officer, chief clinical officer, chief human resource officer, and chief strategy officer, all of which are executive vice presidents. And as I mentioned, there's probably been 3 times in the last 6 years that we have not come to a unified agreement. But in each one of those situations, I allow for each one of those leaders to clearly communicate to me and their colleagues their reason for their position, what they thought the impact would be to the organization if we went in one direction or another. And I listened and I learned and I made a decision that I felt was the right decision for the organization. Interestingly enough, even though they disagreed with me, they embraced the decision that I made because they knew the process that I would go through to arrive at my decision. They also recognized that just maybe I have a tad bit more information that informed my decision that perhaps they were not privy to, in terms of maybe input from the board or from our legislators, or maybe having thought of what might be coming down the pipe. And we moved on. We made the decision and we move on. Knock on wood, they've not been in a position where they've said, I told you so, because it happened to work out to our benefit. But they have the space to have that open and transparent dialogue. And that's more important to me than anything, that we remain open and transparent.
Thank you, Dennis. Ron, I'll pose the same question to you. Have there been any situations that you can think of where you guys may not have been on the same page, or you needed to kind of be a little bit more assertive about why you felt a certain way?
Being assertive is not a problem for Rhonda or any one of my executive leaders. So sorry, Rhonda. I couldn't let that go.
Well, the one thing that comes to my mind, without getting into any details around it, I will tell you, I owe my boss and another one of my colleagues a dinner, because I erred on a different position and side of where they were. And it was about people. When you talk about people and making decisions about individuals, and we actually had a little healthy bet. And I still owe them a dinner or a good bottle of wine that I have not paid up on, because they were, their recommendation was where it actually landed, and I had a different position on that. And we were able to talk through it. We laugh about it now. They remind me that I still owe them. But at the end of the day, it was a healthy dialogue, healthy discussion. And again, I would say, our challenging discussions, or when we have those types of discussions, it's always about people.
But Scott, that interaction was able to be had because of the foundation that we had built in terms of as colleagues and trust. And so we could disagree in a healthy way, because we did it based on the foundation that we had built. And so again, I can embrace and understand the way Rhonda approaches problem solving. Doesn't mean we have to arrive at the same conclusion, but I have an appreciation for her process and how she arrived at her decision. And I routinely remind her she just arrived at the wrong decision that day. But that's okay. I say I told you so. She hadn't said it to me, but I take great joy in letting her know that she was wrong on that occasion.
I love that. And Rhonda will keep on smiling through it all, I'm sure. Great. So I wanted to, well, first of all, I just wanted to comment. So I do a fair amount of, these kinds of events, and also have made some of my own presentations. And I had a recent event where I was speaking to an audience of HR people, and after the presentation, several people came up to me, and I thought they were going to tell me how wonderful my presentation was and how they wanted to follow up. But no, they wanted to ask me about my glasses, and they thought they were really cool because they break apart and they're magnetic. And I can't see, in the short vision area. So I have to put them on to ask questions. So, they didn't come up and compliment me on my presentation. They wanted to know about my glasses. So, and I'm happy to tell you if you want to follow up. So the next question would be, and again, if you have questions, this is a great opportunity to speak with Dennis and Rhonda. They are a world-class healthcare organization, and this is really a chance to ask them questions. So the next question is really, this is a senior HR group attending here. Everyone is either a VP or a CHRO. And the question for both of you is, what advice would you give to a senior HR leader at this point in, whatever economy we're in and whatever post-COVID, world we're living in? I mean, obviously we all know things have changed. And so, from a strategic level, what advice would you give to a senior HR professional? Dennis, I'll start with you.
Scott, I think I mentioned it a moment ago, but I'll just sort of reiterate. Understanding the business, not just being a content expert with regards to human resources. Understand the business that you work in. Then you add value to the organization. Your opinion, your thinking really becomes more of an asset, not just with regards to the people part, and it doesn't matter what industry that you're in, be a resource to the CEO, to the senior leadership team, that in a way that demonstrates your knowledge of the business that you're in. I can't stress that enough, because then your recommendations and your input takes on a completely different level of authenticity, because I know that Rhonda understands healthcare. I mean, she understands the roles that a nurse may play, or an accountant may play, or a food service worker may play, or a physician in the organization, and their value proposition. So that would be my biggest piece of advice, is take the time to learn the business in which you work in.
Awesome. And Rhonda, I will ask you the same question.
There are two things that come to mind, and Dennis said one earlier. You can be invited to the party, but you have to have a voice. So it's not just being seated around the table. What are you contributing? So we want to make sure that we have a voice, and that voice is taken seriously. And then I think the second thing, and for me, is that it takes a village. We can't do this alone. And I have an outstanding group of individuals, talented, high-performing HR professionals that, just like Dennis, listens to the feedback that we have or ask us. That's my board. And they're the ones that provide the guidance and support that's needed. So having the right individuals as well that you surround yourselves with, and the talented individuals, and those that you trust, and take care of those individuals, because we want to keep our HR professionals as well. So having the right team surround you is important as well.
And Scott, I think also taking a position where it's clear that as an HR professional, you absolutely support the colleagues, the employees, and the workforce, but you also understands the importance of the business. And so being able to balance those two things, when Rhonda and I have a conversation, we talk about the people, and we talk about how do we make sure our workforce have the things that they need, that we support them, that she is an advocate for the employees, but she also has to do what's best for the organization. And so I look for someone that can clearly, articulate that position and not be apprehensive about it, to be okay with, listen, provide me with enough information to where I can make the best decision. And that sometimes you have to be very direct and forthright in providing that.
Great. So what's the channel for, I guess, both you and Rhonda and Dennis, to communicate with employees? I know different companies use different things. Some have these, whatever chats with the president. They bring some people into a conference room. Others, I don't know, send out announcements via, your internal communication channels. How do you reach, the people who are sort of on the ground doing the work day to day, and how can they communicate with you if there's an issue or something that they really need to talk about? Are there some mechanisms? And Dennis, I'll start with you.
So I've also, Scott, had to accept the fact that not only am I the president and CEO, I'm also the chief communication officer. My voice is important to the organization. Trust me, I get tired of listening to me talk, so I'm sure others do as well. But it's also very important for our workforce to hear from me. I need to be the trusted source of information. And so our team has developed many platforms by which I communicate to our workforce. I'll let Rhonda talk about some of the colleague communities and the advisory groups that we have. But I also have a way, either through emails, through voicemails, but one that have probably gained more traction than I would ever have believed. I actually have a podcast in which I talk with industry leaders. I talk with politicians, from governors to senators to congressmen. I talk with celebrities. I mean, just talking to people that inspire me, that have done something that uplifts the communities in which we live and work. It doesn't have to be in healthcare. Well, my team, and the podcast is called Here for Good. And it has gained a lot of, I say a lot in my head, popularity and traction. But the team decided, why don't we do something similar, but only talk with our own colleagues? And so it's called Here for Good, the Inside Edition. And so I have a chance to speak with colleagues throughout the organization about what makes them unique, what they bring to the table, their experience at Virtua. And it's really an opportunity for me to hear from them, but yet let the rest of the organization hear it. And it's really has gained a lot of traction. And then the last thing that I do as a way of communicating and being approachable and transparent, once a week, I go to one of our hospitals, clinics, or our large sites, and I either have lunch or breakfast in the cafeteria. I just find the biggest table I can find, and I sit down and I have lunch and invite anybody to want to sit with me, talk with me, share their thoughts, concerns, voice their displeasure. They can do that in a very non-threatening, open and transparent way.
That's terrific. Thank you. Rhonda, same question. What are some of the mechanisms that maybe HR has offered to increase communication between, let's say, the executives, Dennis, yourself, and the employee population? Anything?
Yeah, there are a few things that come to mind. One of which is our quarterly colleague advisory group meeting, and it's with the executive team. So we have local change teams or local teams at each one of our facilities as well as in our practices. And we have representatives from those groups that come together on a quarterly basis. They share what's going on their campuses. The executive team provides an update of what's going on system, but they also can bring issues forward that get addressed. The second thing is part of our recognition. Instead of the traditional bring people together and you do the big award ceremony, we provide recognition on a monthly basis, and we're going to each location to provide this type of recognition, and it's demonstration of our guiding principles. So we are on site, and at the end of that recognition, we do appreciative rounding. So we go to the different departments, we acknowledge people for their either years of service or something that they've done well, but they get one-on-one time with each of the executives. And that happens on a monthly basis. And then we have our colleague communities. And Dennis is on the steering committee of our Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity for All steering committee, where the representatives, the leads from each of those groups share what's going on. They bring forth any questions they might have or issues they might have that we're able to problem solve with.
Great. So we are kind of coming to the end of our webinar here today. We have, a few more minutes. We have a couple more questions, so maybe we'll put those out there, and then we can wrap up. So a question from Andrew Adams. Thanks, Andrew. Question is, as a CEO/CHRO team, what are you most proud of having achieved together for the betterment of the people and the organization? Dennis?
I think is not just the creation, but the living out of our culture of we, in which we have created an environment where I think people truly feel like they matter. They matter to the organization, they matter to our patients, they matter to the community in which we serve. And I can't see anything greater that we've been able to do than that. We're an organization where people encourage friends and family members to seek us out for care. We recently did our colleague culture survey, and having right at 85% participation, to me says something that we have an organization that cares to the point where they want to lend their voice to improving the working environment here. So for me, that's it.
That's terrific. Thank you, Dennis. Rhonda?
That the culture of we is what came to mind for me as well. But to add a little bit more to that, it's our inclusion, diversity, and equity journey. And you will notice we use IDE versus DEI because we want to create first an inclusive environment where people feel like they belong and that their voice is heard. So before you bring in diversity. But we also have put a dedicated focus in our talent review, which is our discussion twice a year where we talk about the talent in our organization. And we focused on diverse talent. And Dennis glossed over it. But when you look at 55% of Virtua senior leadership team are females, And that has been an improvement since Dennis has been on board. While healthcare is a high industry of employing females, when you look at who sits in the C-suite, it was not female driven. And that has been the change. So our focus and the organization sees that. The investment from a diversity standpoint, and the organization sees the changes that we are making in leadership and who we are promoting. And we are seeing more diverse people. We're seeing more women.
Terrific. So we got a more of a comment than a question from Sherry Collins Weideman. Thank you so much. I think it's a very appropriate way to sort of conclude. It says, thank you for your time. While I now live in Maryland, I have a good memory of my experiences of Virtua of Voorhees. I had two daughters born there. A miscarriage, a second grader who spent a week there one December. We still have the Christmas themed pillowcase that the volunteers made for the kids. She is now a healthy, soon to be 16-year-old. Keep making a difference. Aww. So there you have a testimonial for you guys. And yeah, that's really where it's at, right? Like that's the bottom line of everything here. So I want to thank you guys really from the bottom of my heart for taking the time to do this. Dennis, thank you so much for making time out of your schedule. Rhonda, you always come through for us. So thank you for that. And yeah, we have the recording. We'll send it out. I think Larry and Linda will take care of sending it out to the participants as well as to the entire HR Executive Alliance membership. So they'll have a chance to look at that. Yeah, great stuff. And I wish you guys tremendous continued success on your journey. So if you have any final comments, you're welcome to make them.
No, I appreciate it. I always love the opportunity to showcase the work that we do at Virtua, and it's been an honor to do it with my CEO.
Scott, I would echo what Rhonda said. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to share the great work that Rhonda and her team are providing Virtua and this community. It's always a pleasure to participate and to see you. So thanks for having us.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I also want to thank the team behind this, Larry Siegel and Linda Casano, who are from the Rosen Group and really help with all the technical details that have to take place to make this event happen. I also want to thank all the participants today. Thank you so much for being here. And also want to thank the partners of the HR Executive Alliance, who are also the partners with the HR Department of the Year Award. So we're really happy that this was a team effort. So thank you guys. Let you go along your day, and that's a wrap. So take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.